quarter life crisis stage, I was like, can I work like this for the rest of my life? I've never ever even considered getting a career that I really enjoy. It was always like, you've got to study, you got straight into work, and that's the only way to make more money. Well, I never set out thinking I'm going to be an investor. If I actually think about it now, it was always about getting my first place. Because when you're sitting in a dark, furnitureless home, you're just thinking, I just want my first home that I can live in. It took a little while to get there. I sort of was saving like really aggressively. And I remember calling up my mortgage broker and I was like, hey, I got a bit of like money here. Like, what do you think I can do with that? He said, well, actually, you probably got enough to do something with that so you don't have to use your savings. And I was like, what are you talking about? What is this? And what do you mean I don't have to use my savings?
Eye opener.
Yeah, like my mortgage broker was like, you have enough, so you go ahead. And I was like, I've done no research and I wouldn't even know where to start. But yeah, I mean, after the first property, I was like, oh, I would love to retire early.
Welcome guys to the Tax podcast. Thank you for joining me. Today we've got Fiona, a good friend of mine, but also a very good customer of Tax. She's got an astonishing property portfolio and we're going to dive into it and find out exactly how she got there. So stay tuned and let's get into this. All right, so Fiona, thank you so much for having the time to come here today and sharing some insights with us about your journey, because this podcast is all about getting people to get that inspiration from someone that might be in the same shoes as you at some point in time back then. They might be sitting there today going, you know what? I know this podcast is all about inspiring. What is it going to take to get someone to go from no properties, but to hear your journey might just be that spark. So maybe share a bit about yourself first.
Yeah, awesome. Well, firstly, thanks for having me. A little bit about myself. So I was born here and my parents were sort of, came over when they were quite young. And I, moved out when I was 17 because my family had some financial struggles. So they weren't able to support me anymore. So I moved out and, managed to get through uni and then, went straight into work because obviously, I had to support myself and pay for rent. So I had to do both my bachelor and my master online so that I could work full time and pay for rent and, in some instances help my parents financially as well. So it was really important.
And this is all while you were living by yourself or out of home.
Yeah.
And you were juggling uni. And what did you study?
Yeah, so I studied bachelor in business, majoring marketing, and then I did an MBA after that. So I started, in a marketing role working at the Star Casino. I actually started while I was in uni, started as a table game dealer. But it was fun. And then went on to do marketing there, got myself a marketing role. And then over time, sort of just started really growing my career, got into more on the marketing technology side. And, 10 years later, I'm now sort of my title's a bit funny, so it won't really mean anything, but I'm sort of like a tech lead that leads a team of engineers, our development software engineers. Yeah.
Okay. And this is in the financial space at the moment?
Yeah. So I work at Westpac now. I have been doing that for the last 3 years. Yeah. So that's always been fun. Yeah. I guess like for me, because I moved out so young, it's really just been trying to make as much money as possible. So just wherever, the tide takes me in terms of my careers.
And that's always been your motive because it was always this survival instinct, right?
Yeah.
Of being living outside of home. I've got to fend for myself. And so that's the motive that really you've taken you the whole way in your journey, because it's like you realize once you leave home, I'm assuming that you knew that there was no one else to rely on. Mum and dad were paying for your rent.
Yeah.
And so it's all on you.
Yeah.
Right. And realizing that at 17 sort of built that into your DNA to realize that if it's not you, there's nobody there to save you.
Yeah.
Is that how you felt?
Yeah, 100%. You don't work, you don't eat. Like it was as simple as that. At one point I was living, when I moved out, I moved into a place where with some flatmates, and those flatmates and stuff happened, and then they had to leave, and no one paid the electricity bill. So we living in a place where they took all the furniture, and I had no furniture, no electricity, so I was just in this like dark empty house.
That's wild.
I was like, oh crap.
Great story to share today. Not so great when you're
Yeah, at the time, eating mee goreng every day was a little bit rough. But yeah, I mean, that was kind of the big driver to go, I really want a home, right? I really want a home where I can come home to, be comfortable.
Yeah, like bills paid for. I guess you're going through this and you're trying to build a career for yourself. You also even did an MBA, which is quite ambitious. What strikes someone to do an MBA?
I think at the time I just really thought, that old school mentality, you've got to study, you've got to get better. And that's the only way to make more money. That's the only way to, be comfortable and then be able to buy your first property. Like, if I actually think about it now, it was always about getting my first place, right? It was always saving money and trying to be as like all roads led to the ultimate goal of having your first home and giving my family, like not just me, like me and my family, a little bit of stability.
Yeah. What perked your interest into property and not stocks, for example?
I think I never set out thinking I'm going to be an investor. It was always just, I was kind of, when you're sitting in a dark, furnitureless home, you're just thinking, I just want my first home that I can live in.
And that's interesting because like circumstantially, that's what allows you to start the journey of investing in property. And it's not about having this massive ambitious idea of going 0 to 20 properties in 5 years. That's as great as that sounds. It's just not realistic to have that mindset for a young person, especially that's trying to survive, eat well, go through the MBA, pay the bills, and also, hold a stable job and build a career. So I think there's so many things that it's just not possible at that age, I feel, that you could build something like that, like a big property portfolio. So circumstantially, having the initiative to do one thing, like buy a property for yourself, to have the comfort of knowing that here I own my own home, I think that's a big milestone.
Yeah.
For anybody.
Yeah, I mean, it took a little while to get there. There was definitely a lot of, little challenges that presented itself along the way. I sort of was saving like really aggressively as I could without impacting my lifestyle too much. Like I still was a kid. I still wanted to go out and have fun and not just, save every single penny. My money management was not, amazing. I wasn't super frugal either. So it's just finding that balance in life. But then, and then I finally saved enough for, I would say just enough to kind of get a deposit. And then, some family sort of said, can we borrow some money? And then I kind of let everything to them because, it was like.
That's what you do for family.
Yeah, exactly. And at the time it was like almost enough, but not quite enough yet anyway. So I knew I had to continue probably saving for a little bit. So before I was comfortable to get the place, I was like, oh, if it's just for a year or two, no worry. Just when you're ready, pay that back. And then that dragged on for years. It does.
And I know what you talked about when it comes to family, and especially in an Asian culture where people need to help each other. You're there to support. Same reasons why you've got me. I mean, I'm a perfect example of an Asian child that lived with their parents till I was 28 years old. So, like these things do happen. And that's just the culture of the Asian community where they try to look after each other. And so, of course, lending money isn't abnormal. It is quite normal, especially to look after each other. So, and that goes pear-shaped for you.
Yeah, I mean, and it did. And it definitely, set me back where I was like 22 or 23 and I was like, I'm almost ready. And then that kind of drags it out a few more years. So, I got to 26 and then we managed to resolve it. And then at that point I was like, yes, I think I have enough. But of course, property prices, inflated a lot during that time. So a property that was, I was thinking at the time of 600K, I could probably get a house or at least, maybe one a bit further away, maybe a small one, but something that me and my mum and my sister can, we can live in comfortably. And at that point, but then by that time he was like, well, I can get a 3-bedroom apartment. And at, so Parramatta area. And at that point it was like, what, I'll just do it. Like, let's just kind of land a first one, not because it's a financially sound decision, but because I am just tired of renting, and my sister and my mom, will kind of be apart, and them struggling as well to kind of find a stable home as well. So, okay, let's just get it. So that was, the first milestone.
And so then you buy this property to owner occupy it, you have that chance to move into it, and you put your family into it. And then what stirs the next?
So interestingly, probably for 2 years after that, I wasn't really thinking about investment. I was just like, just keep saving. Let's just keep saving and see what.
Because you're on a roll at this stage. I mean, if if you're saving $100,000 for an apartment, like you are a roll here. You know how to do it. The same principles apply. You save money. You've got to. Can I just pull back to get him into $100,000? I imagine it's in the vicinity. So to buy a property like that, $130,000. How do you even what sort of sacrifices does someone like yourself have to make even to get there? Given that you had to rent, and you had a family to look after, and you had bills to pay, and you had the lifestyle to live, and there's the weekends, and how do you balance all that, and how do you make some rational decisions around spending?
I try to spend on things that I value. So money on spending time with friends, food and going out and stuff. I spend actually a lot of money on more my disposable income. I would be happy to spend on that. I didn't go anywhere near, branded stuff, fashion stuff. I didn't care for any of that stuff. So I didn't spend any of my money on, an LV bag or, Gucci shoes or whatever.
You really limit your discretionary spending to things that are unnecessary. And you value certain things, like you go to the bar, you feel like, hey, I'm going to buy a round of drinks for my girlfriends or something, then that's fine. But that's as far as it goes for you.
Yes, and everything else is on bills, and then at least 50% of the paycheck goes away into savings. And then I thankfully landed a contractor role with the decent day rate, managed to keep that for sort of 18 months. So that definitely sped the process of saving up quite a lot. Managed to pay off my HEC steps and more and that's 2 degrees at the age of 23 or something like that. So so that definitely helped. But I think choosing one thing to go, I value that enough to spend my money on, and then willing to sort of sacrifice everything else.
Yeah, and I think it all comes down to that, because that budgeting process, it becomes habitual, and it really defines you in the way that your relationship with money, right? And eventually you get into this habit of saying, okay, well, this is what I need for myself in order to look after my financial future.
Yeah, exactly. I think in your mind, it's like if your minimum of savings is say 50% of your paycheck, that becomes just a normal thing, right? Whereas for, some people where, they just put in what they have left at the end of the month, you're never really going to get anywhere. But also I think it's important not to restrict yourself too much. So if you set an unrealistic goal of, I'm going to save 8% on my pay, with bills and still wanting to have a good time. You're in your 20s, you should still live a full life and spend time with your friends. So if you try to set those unrealistic goals, you're more likely to burn out and then do something drastic.
Yeah, all in moderation is what I hear. That's awesome. So then you go through, you've saved $130,000 to get this apartment, put the family in it, and then you're on your next journey now. Now you're sort of like, well, I've achieved that. Yeah, which is a massive milestone.
Yeah.
You helped the family out, got the property. What spurred your interest in the next?
I spent the next, I think probably 2 to 3 years just not really thinking about property, but just saving still the same habits that I had from before I bought the first property, just continue that on. And then, probably, 2 3 years later, I was like, oh, I've got these savings again, right? I had I don't know, say 100 or whatever. Okay, with savings. And I was like, you know what? This money's just sitting there now. What can I do? So I remember giving up my mortgage broker a call. Gave him a call and I was like, hey, I've got a bit of money here. What do you think I can do with that? And he was like, oh, yeah, let me have a look for you. And then he said, well, actually, you probably got enough equity in your first property to get something, to get, to do something with that so you don't have to use your savings. And I was like, what are you talking about? What is this equity thing? And, what do you mean I don't have to use my savings or all of it? And so he went through this entire process and explaining, what equity does, and then your option, all my options, and then it just went, you can actually get an investment property of about this much with the equity that you've got. So, and I was like, oh, wow,
Eye opener.
yeah, like really? No way. And not to use much of my savings, like I get to still hold on to my cash.
Which is always important, right?
Yes.
To have that advice around having a mortgage broker at the right time, right place, that's giving you good information. For those out there, it's all about having the right people at the right time to offer you these tools to leverage. And it's good that you come across your mortgage broker at that time who gave you that piece of information. And then what type of investment did you go into? What's the first investment property that did you decide to act on?
Yeah, so I think at the time, my mortgage broker was like, you have enough, so you go ahead. And I was like, I've done no research and I wouldn't even know where to start, right? Like I was at a loss. So, and he was like, well, maybe you should consider a buyer. So then he gave me a contact to someone to help and just have a conversation and see what happens. And then obviously, went on to speak to them and they were like, well, this is the area that's booming, blah, blah, blah. If you want the help, I can help, And then I was like, yeah, well, please do, because
Save you the time, the effort, the energy to go and do research because you've got your own life to live.
yeah, I am all about outsourcing things that I'm not necessarily good at, right? So I know that my job and, the things that I am good at and it's easier and saves me time or doesn't take a lot of my time, I will do. But if I can, spend a bit of money, and this is what I mean, I'm not like when I said I wasn't frugal, because you do need to spend money where it's due. And there are these experts that has all the right resources and all the right information and contacts for it. It makes sense to get them to help rather than me trying to stumble through and risk, making a bad decision.
For sure. And I imagine like the buyer's agent, especially in today's era, you're dealing with people that have buying experience in areas that you've probably never heard of, right?
Really?
When it comes to investing, for you, it's all about metrics and dollars and cents, right? So it's all about where do I go to make the dollar work the hardest for me? It's not about where do I go that I'm comfortable with.
Yes, exactly.
And so the buyer's agent experience gives you that.
Yes, exactly. And I think getting that objective view is also really helpful. I mean, I definitely knew that I wasn't going to have enough to get something in Sydney, like metro areas. So it had to be regional or, in interstate. And I remember when, he kind of like very simply said once, just make sure you're buying with your head and not your heart, and when you go out on your own, you tend to veer towards areas, because you're like, oh, this is a good, like Melbourne, that's a good city that I, feel more connected to. So, naturally you want to look there, even though that's not necessarily the best investment choice at the time, because, maybe the growth is not what's there. So I felt like it really would be helpful to bring someone on that's completely objective, just looks at numbers.
Yeah.
Fact-based.
Yeah. Love that, because, I'm just thinking now, the property, I'm thinking about the property that I had bought, my first property was very much about heart, about the comfort of knowing that the investment property I bought was somewhere local to me.
Yeah.
And I felt that this is where you want to buy, because like, how else will, would you be able to measure the metrics if it's that within your reach or you don't know the area? And I thought I knew this area so well, but looking in hindsight, if I compare where I bought versus where you bought, this property I had did much worse than some of the properties you bought, because of you had the right support, you had the right education.
Yeah.
You need to be good at savings, holding on to money, but you also need to be very good at, is this what I'm hearing, that you need to be good at spending money when the time is due, when the time is right. And of course, investing in people, especially a good buyer's agent, in some cases like yours, can really pay off. And is that your experience as well?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you look at the original figure and you go, it's quite an expensive service. Like, could I just do this myself? Most people, like a lot of people, trust themselves over other people anyway, right? And then to kind of go, oh, you have to pay them on top. when you can do this stuff yourself, they go and do that. And, props to them for putting in the effort. I'm a bit lazier. But yeah, I think like it was a lot of money up front. But then if I look at the value I got from them, I got that back 2 times more than what I paid immediately. Like as soon as like the property settled, right? In terms of the deal that I got, the location.
So they negotiated a good price.
Yeah, they help negotiate. They are able to identify properties off market, things that you're not going to be able to find out yourself when you're looking on real estate.
Unless someone's willing to do the legwork, talk to the agents, have that relationship,
The contacts.
to bring in the best value properties before it even hits the market.
I mean, at the time, Queensland was absolutely booming. Well, it started booming. Like, I think, there was a definitely nervousness, right? It's like, oh crap, I'm getting investment property. You hear the horror stories and, it is a big risk and Asians are risk averse.
But it's so true. Culturally, we are very risk averse. Besides besides getting on a boat, being in the country, I think everything else, I asked Mum, Mum, let's go on a trip on the Royal Caribbean. And she's like, no way, I'm not getting on a boat again. I've done that before and that's the last. So I get it. I certainly understand. And that's why, the old saying of the old mentality of, let's save up enough money, just pay off the house so we don't owe anyone anything. We don't owe money. It's very much the old school mentality. But yes, in the Asian culture, it's very much, and a lot of people still live and breathe that, is that I would never borrow the bank's money. I would save every dollar to buy something.
Yeah, debt is scary. Yeah. Right? And then now I'm taking out more debt. I've already got my first place. You've already got, and you look at that number in your banking app and you're like, oh, that's awesome debt, right? What if, like a rocket strikes my house and that's gone?
And everything can go wrong.
Yeah.
Right. And there are things that can go wrong, but you can mitigate these things as you learn and you experience property.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to sell insurance, but yeah, of course, insurance is important. And they've got things that protect people. Of course, landlord insurance. I'm assuming you take on landlord insurance. How do you break through that adversity of in terms of risk mitigation and?
Well, asking a lot of questions to, the likes of my mortgage broker and the buyer agent, asking friends and things like that. Funny enough, I actually probably didn't speak too much to my friends about it because, you kind of anticipate that they'll go, oh, risky, maybe not a great idea. And I feel like I didn't want to be deterred at that point. I was like, I have a good feeling that, this is the right direction. And like I mentioned earlier, I wasn't like a stock person or whatever. It was always like property is, always the best investment.
Roof over your head.
Exactly.
Bricks and mortar.
Yeah.
And you understand the value of it.
You understand it, yeah. So, yeah, just really ask as many questions as possible and just try to go, plan for the worst case scenario, like you said, mitigate, speak to really good people. I was very lucky that that first purchase, I had a really great insurance of a mate who did the insurance for me. My mortgage broker was a mate. He'd already done that, my first house. So, the second one was easy. The buyer agent was, with a contact. So like referral. So I think just kind of just building that strong network and foundation around you.
Yeah, like a team, right?
Yeah.
Of people that really have your best interest.
Yeah.
And that's important, right? As much as your story as it sounds like you've done really well in terms of had the right people on board, you've had the trust, the integrity was there, they were there to look after your best interest. That's not always been the case of everybody. And so I think that's probably a good takeaway for people. I think building the right contacts and I guess even let's break it down to choosing your mortgage broker. How did you come across that mortgage broker in order to trust it? It had to come through a source, I imagine.
Yeah. Again, I got that from a referral from a dear friend who, and, they've known this person for a very long time and I trust my friends. So, if this person referred them, they had to be good.
Yeah, and so that's really important for people to know because a bad, loan structure could really make or break you. And for example, had you used your cash to buy your investment property, that would have changed the trajectory of your investing journey and even the way you move forward, right? Because it really can slow you down. If you've got no money at bank when you're using cash to buy every investment property, and that takes time, and so it can really slow you down and bulk you down from what you're going out there to pursue. And even if you don't have that, it sounds like you're sort of incidentally coming across this investing.
Yeah.
What makes you go, okay, well, I've got these properties. What makes you keep going? Like, what is it now? Now do you get a sense of, I've got a bit of a formula here.
Yeah.
It works. It's proven.
Yeah.
You can see equity growing.
Yeah.
Property.
Yeah.
Then is it now rinse and repeat?
So, I mean, the first one, that first investment one in Queensland, I mean, within like 6 to 12 months, it grew exponential. I think like the growth was something like 50%, right? Which was crazy, like unheard of, but it was just a really, really well-timed purchase in a really, really great area. So then it was like, well, why wouldn't I just keep going? And then because that grew so quickly again, you earned equity on that again. And then using that, so I was like, well, I'm ready. Let's bring on the next one. And so actually that one came within 6 months, I think. That equity grew that quickly. So I was like, well, I'm ready for the next one. So we're like, well, there's no time like now. So we just went and got the second one. So
It's all about timing, isn't it?
exactly. It was, I think, you spend too much time pondering over this, you do lose a lot of opportunities. So you just have to make a quick decision sometimes, even though it's a little bit scary. It's analysis paralysis, right? Like you just spend so much time worrying and thinking about worst case scenarios. I already did it for the first, you got that formula like you mentioned. So why not go again?
Love it. And so I guess what is the journey here? I mean, you how many properties now in your portfolio?
Yeah, so it was that one, the second investment one, which was in Queensland as well. And that's also experienced really great growth. I ran out of borrowing capacity. So I was like, oh, well, just be patient for a little while. So didn't really make any major moves for, I think, about 2 years. And then again, I was like, oh, let me check in with my mortgage broker. I like to do a bit of a pulse check with him every so often. Like he's just been so involved in the journey. He's like my go-to person now, hey, like, do you think, now could be a good time, etc. And yeah, so equity was gained again on the second investment. So we were like, okay, well, maybe we can go again. Managed to restructure the loans in a way that I could, get that borrowing capacity again. And we went again for the third one.
Yep. And bought somewhere else or?
So the next one, we decided to go into a different state, attack into a different market. I think Queensland was pretty bloated by that time. So yeah, we went to a different state. So I think we were looking between like SA and WA. Yeah, and then we landed a couple of good properties there. By the way, I used the same buyer agent throughout every one of these.
Okay.
Yeah, and obviously,
Those the trust is there.
and yeah, trust is there. Like you just don't change something that's not broken. So you just sort of keep going until you kind of go, yeah, that's kind of stale now. But yeah, we're like, let's just, keep doing the same thing. And yeah, it's all been very pretty smooth then. And like, it's crazy how when you have the right people around you, it feels pretty effortless. Like you just don't go through this crazy amount of anxiety and stress. Like it's still a little bit stressful, and there's a lot to do, like paperwork, whatever. But you've got the right people around you and you trust that if there are alarm bells or red flags that they will raise it immediately. So
Yeah, property investing is all about being passive, right? So if it stresses you out, it's really trying to reconfigure your team and find the right people that takes the stress away from it. Because property investing is technically a passive income gathering asset.
Yeah.
And at some stage, I guess for people, for myself included, I feel like property investing is an asset that allows me long term to find a way to retire, especially if I can pay down these properties, to try to build that passive income, especially through a yield and the rent that we receive from them. Is that how you perceive property investing for you? What is the long-term vision for yourself?
like I mentioned, I mean, I've been working full-time since I was 17, and it was always about survival. I got to probably, the quarter life crisis stage, you're 25, like just before I got my first one, I was like, can I work like this for the rest of my life in corporate? I've always been in corporate and I've never ever even considered getting a career that I really enjoy. It was always like, what is the best pathway to earning the most money to, be comfortable? And after the first property, I was like, oh, I would love to retire early. So now it's like, well, how do I retire by 45 or 50? So that's my goal now, just continue. And it might not always be property. There might be other ways to do it, to kind of add to it, like diversify. But yeah, that's the ultimate goal, to kind of, get enough investments to be able to quit my job.
Lovely. And so that's something that everyone will have that conversation with themselves at some point in their career, in their life, and to have that ambitious goal, whether it's 40, 45, 50, 55. Some people love working, right? And some people just want to, I want to do this forever. For you, it seems like property investing has given you some light in terms of seeing some financial freedom in the near future by allowing you to buy property and hopefully receive rent or sell these assets down, I imagine.
Yeah.
Collect some sort of, I guess, the capital gain from that to then live a lifestyle that gives you that freedom.
Yeah.
But of course, I guess in order to get to that point, I think there's a lot of sacrifices that have to be made and decisions that have to be made. And I think it's so valuable for the viewers out there is, I guess, some of the key takeaways is that you've formed an awesome team for sure, gotten the right advice, and all through referral. And of course, research and referral is everything, because without the referral and understanding the experience of the person that referred you in the first place, right? That's always critical, but then finding the people that connected you with them to get you the buyer's agency advice, knowing where to buy, and taking that away from you. So while you can focus on your day job, focusing on a career, you can let someone else take care of the things that matter that you have no idea about, which is investing where it matters most.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so, and also, but in order to get to that point, I think really importantly, I think the sacrifices you make in your earlier days and having the right mindset to do that. And it doesn't have to be so ambitious. The ambition came from seeing the light, and it's the baby steps you took, right? In buying just one property and seeing what one property can do for you. That was the eye opener, wasn't it?
Yeah, 100%. And I think like a lot of people I know would be like, oh, I need to invest in property. I'm going to get a property, I'm going to get, I've got enough money. I see them sit on it for 2-3 years and they just don't do anything. And I just sit there and go like, just do it. Like, what is stopping you? So I think like having the courage to take the plunge and not get, derailed just because something tiny, didn't seem to go your way. A lot of people kind of get deterred so easily. So kind of just like pushing back through that barrier and just picking up a phone or like talking to someone and just like putting some action into it was like, I think was the biggest thing, like I think where there's a will, there is a way. And too many people, let little things stop them.
Love it. I think it's been so insightful, Fiona, in you sharing your journey. I think so many people are going to find value from that because you're right. People get so bogged down by there's too many things that are stopping me from making a decision. Sometimes you got to start. And of course, finding the right people to ask, speak to friends, family, but also making a decision, because the more you ask, the more alternatives and reasons not to do something.
Exactly.
So always do your research, ask the right questions, but make decisions. So thank you so much, Fiona. It's been such a pleasure sharing your story.